At a campaign rally in Missouri Friday night, the president made it clear where he stands on this matter.
Brett Kavanaugh, fantastic man. He was born for the U.S. Supreme Court. He was born for it. And it's going to happen. We have to fight for him, not worry about the other side. And by the way, women are for that more than anybody would understand.
Let's bring in CNN legal analyst and civil rights attorney Areva Martin. We're also speaking to political analyst Peter Mathews. Thank you both for joining us. Areva, let's start with you. And I want to first sort this out. I think from the perspective of anybody who wants to know the truth about these sexual assault allegations and who is not particularly well versed in the protocol of nomination hearings and Senate Judiciary Committee hearings, et cetera, you kind of think, you intuit at least, well, what does it matter if this is all delayed by a day or 2 or 3 or what the heck, 4 days? What matters is getting to the truth. So my question to you is, what is normal and not normal in these kinds of circumstances?
Well, Cyril, the problem is what's normal and not normal is being determined as we go by Chuck Grassley. He holds all the cards here. He is the chair of this committee. The GOP has the numbers, so they're basically in control. So he can determine whether there's some arbitrary cutoff of 10 p.m. on Friday night, or if he gives an extension of an additional 24 hours, if Dr. Ford has to testify on Monday, or if she has to testify on Wednesday. And that's what's been so frustrating about this process. In addition, Senator Grassley...
Is he putting undue pressure on Dr. Ford?
I think he's putting undue pressure on her. She's asking for some very reasonable concessions, and he keeps saying, on one hand, that he wants to accommodate her and to hear her testimony, but yet he makes these arbitrary deadlines, and that undermines his statements that he really wants to get at the truth. And we shouldn't forget that Dr. Ford also asked that witnesses that can corroborate her allegation of attempted rape, that they also be called to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator Grassley has just summarily dismissed that request and said, no, there are only going to be 2 witnesses, Judge Kavanaugh and Dr. Ford. So I don't know how we get to the truth if they are refusing to allow witnesses that can provide critical information to testify. And then we can't overlook what Senate Majority Leader McConnell has already said, and what Donald Trump has said. Basically, they're saying, we have the votes. He's going to be confirmed. So in some ways, we have to ask ourselves, what is this hearing where Dr. Ford gets to testify? What is it all about anyhow, since they've already predetermined that they're going to reject her allegations and they're going to move forward in confirming Judge Kavanaugh?
Peter, this is what's so difficult for the Republicans in this particular situation. They were, I should say, on the brink of a major political achievement, which was getting a second Supreme Court nominee during the Trump administration. And now they have to put it on pause.
Yeah, but this has to do with the integrity of the whole process. And it's been a travesty. They made a travesty of the process by not calling in witnesses, by not letting the FBI really investigate the situation to get to the bottom of the facts. Because you can't have a fair hearing, Cyril, unless you have all the facts. That's why Dr. Ford has been demanding those facts so that the FBI be allowed to investigate it. And if she's asking for that, how could you even think she might be guilty of anything? I think she's probably telling the truth, and we should let the truth come out and stop these people like Grassley obstructing the truth, in a sense, by saying, let's ramrod this thing through. Don't forget, the FBI has been used before to investigate what the allegations about Clarence Thomas against Anita Hill. Anita Hill's allegations against Thomas, actually claims which are not allegations. And that was used, the FBI was called in then. President George H.W. Bush allowed the FBI, he had to request it, because the Senate cannot request the FBI directly. They have to ask the president to do so, and President Trump refuses to do so.
Areva, why is the FBI not handling this investigation? I mean, I know Dr. Ford, that was her initial request. She wanted an investigation, and she wanted the FBI to handle it. But the counter-argument was, well, what she's alleging, which is sexual assault, something close to attempted rape, based on her accounting of the events, would not be under the purview of the FBI.
Well, that's absolutely not true. And I think Peter just, made a very important point. Former President George Bush requested that the FBI get involved and investigate charges that Anita Hill made against Clarence Thomas. And those charges, we should make clear, those were allegations of sexual harassment. They don't rise to the level of the attempted rape claim that has been made by Dr. Ford. The FBI has the ability, it has the expertise to conduct a investigation. They could have done so very quickly to help us get to the facts. And it begs the question as to whether the GOP senators want to get to the truth, or do they just want to window dress? Do they just want to pretend that they've, allowed this process to move forward in a fair way? We can't get to the truth if there are precipient witnesses. There's no process on this planet where you're trying to get to the truth, and there's some witnesses out there that can provide critical information, and you refuse to hear from those witnesses. And one thing that I think we should keep in mind, Dr. Ford has identified Mark Judge, a friend of Judge Kavanaugh. She puts him in the room. If someone is making up a story, would you put the perpetrator or the alleged perpetrator's friend in the room and then ask that person be subpoenaed?
But that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. We're not going to hear from him. We're not going to hear from her therapist. We're not going to hear from her husband. We're not going to hear from a number of witnesses that she's identified that can shed light on her allegation, her very serious allegation of attempted rape.
All right, so let's see whether she decides to testify. She hasn't formally decided yet. I mean, it seems to be leaning in favor of yes, but we don't know for sure. And her lawyer says they're giving themselves 24 hours to decide. Ariva, Peter, stay with me, because there's another story. It's really 1A and 1B today that's very important. I want to hear both of you on it. Friday brought us a stunning report that says the U.S. Deputy Attorney General was considering the possibility of secretly taping President Trump in order to show he was unfit for office. Rod Rosenstein issued 2 statements denying the New York Times report, calling it inaccurate. So on the back of that, let's bring back political analyst Peter Mathews and CNN legal analyst Ariva Martin, both of them in Los Angeles. Peter, should President Trump fire Rod Rosenstein based on these reports?
He's been issued to get some kind of a pretext to fire him for a long time, because he's concerned about how the fact that Rosenstein, keeps backing Mueller's probe, which I think he absolutely should, and Mueller should be left alone by the president so that justice can be seen all the way through, and should not try to obstruct justice or get involved. Like the president's constantly hammering Rosenstein. He's just waiting for this moment and something else to give him a pretext to actually get rid of Rosenstein. And of course he should not fire Rosenstein, in my view, because that would interfere with the probe, with the important, legitimate probe of the possible collusion or collaboration with Russia and the president's campaign.
But Peter, Rosenstein serves at the pleasure of the president. Any president in this situation would have trouble, having 100% trust and confidence in Rosenstein after this reporting.
Well, he has to make sure the reporting was accurate, that it actually happened the way it did, the way it was said it was done. And in whichever case, I think Trump, it doesn't matter what we think about it. And to be honest with you, Trump is going to do whatever he wants to. And he probably will fire Rosenstein at the slight drop of a hat.
Well, we know he considered it earlier this year, and he didn't do it.
Right. Well, he's also concerned about the backlash that could occur, because if he does that, that's right on the path to obstruction of justice right there. Since he's a subject, his campaign's a subject of the probe. It's not just some third-party probe. This has to do with the president himself, his campaign, and there was so much circumstantial evidence that there was some certain collaboration or conspiracy, possibly, between his campaign and Russian interests and certain Russian people, at the Trump Tower, for example. It's a very serious moment we're in right now, obviously.
Ariva, help us with the legality of all of this. First of all, is it legal to secretly record a sitting president?
Well, that's an important question, Cyril, and not sure that we know the answer to that. Depends on where this tape was going to be made. We know that D.C. is a one-party consent state, so you don't need both parties to consent to audio tape the president. We've seen several other members of the Trump team, Omarosa in particular, who made recordings while she was in the White House.
In the Situation Room, no less.
Yes, unbeknownst to individuals that she worked with in the White House. I think the issue here is we have to look at what Special Counsel Mueller has done. He's done something that's incredibly brilliant. He's aware of the political pressure. He's aware that there's mounting pressure by the president, a suggestion that he's going to not only fire Rod Rosenstein, but also fire Jeff Sessions shortly after the midterm election. So what the special counsel has done is he's farmed off pieces of the Russian investigation to various departments of justice around the country, the Southern District of New York in particular. So even if the special counsel is fired because Rod Rosenstein is fired or Jeff Sessions is fired, that doesn't relieve Donald Trump of the legal jeopardy that he finds himself in. He could still find himself a part of a probe by the Department of Justice that takes place by one of these other offices that's not at the main DOJ. So I don't think we get away from, or Donald Trump gets a pass on the Russian investigation, even if he makes the drastic decision to fire Rod Rosenstein.
Yeah, Riva, this is fascinating, and I actually never heard this before. You're saying essentially that Mueller put in place some tripwires to insulate himself from Donald Trump ever wanting to fire either Rod Rosenstein, Jeff Sessions, or anyone else who has any kind of sway over the investigation. Real quick, again on the politics of this, Peter Mathews, who does this help going into the midterms? Because it does give some credence to one of Donald Trump's central arguments that there is a deep state of unelected civil servants who want to mess with the agenda of a democratically elected president.
I think if any help anyone, it's going to help the Democrats, because people are fed up with the double dealing, the double talking of mostly Republicans and who are trying to win this election, would keep control of the House and the Senate at any cost. And I don't think people believe about the deep state theory, the conspiracy theory. The majority don't believe it. Maybe 1/3, the hardcore Trump supporters believe it. That's only about 35% of the population.
But even if you don't believe it, this kind of news makes you think twice. When you hear somebody who has potentially wanted to recruit cabinet members to invoke the 25th Amendment and get the president out of office, who's been democratically elected, you have to ask yourself the question.
You also have to be clear that that was all very accurately, as it was reported, was actually accurately took place. And maybe there'll be some doubt. I don't think it's going to sway a lot of people who are against Trump and have been against Trump because of all of the malfeasance of his malpractice in office in terms of policy, in terms of process and the due process of law, the rule of law. He's flaunted that, and people are fed up with it. I think the majority of Americans are going to vote to put the House of Representatives in the Democratic hands for sure, and possibly the Senate as well. We'll see how it happens on November the 6th, though.
Yep, that's in a month and a half. All right, Peter Mathews, Riva Martin, thank you both for your time.
Cyril.
We appreciate it, as always.
Thank you.